During the COVID-19 pandemic, New Zealanders who were living overseas returned home in historically high numbers. This because the then government led by Jacinda Ardern had handled the COVID outbreak well. She was globally praised and this instilled confidence in the country's residents. But many seem to be done with it now. Nearly 1.5 lakh New Zealand residents have left the country in the last 1 year. This is the highest annual number ever. This because the country is facing some major economic issues.
New Zealand is technically into recession. In some countries, because to avoid the adverse attention of foreign investors, rating agencies, migrants, and so, they try and cook up the numbers. But factually speaking, as per my own economic analysis, New Zealand is in recession. It's in a technical recession right now. And one of the typical characteristics of a recession is that there is rampant unemployment. Companies start cutting jobs. The salaries do not grow for the people who already have jobs but who have not lost their jobs. Their salaries do not grow, and your cost of living rises significantly. If your cost of living in a country like New Zealand, which is supposed to be one of the developed part of the world, if the cost of living rises and your salaries are not rising in the same proportion, people in these kind of countries, they survive on mortgages. Your house is mortgaged, your car is mortgaged, everything is on loan, and you basically run your living on EMIs with little left for your other groceries and other expenses. So I think with the cost of living shooting up, people are not able to meet their monthly commitments, the EMI commitment, the mortgages, and so and so.
Unemployment is rising, interest rates are still high, though the central bank did cut them recently. Economic growth is lagging, and public sector jobs have also been cut. According to data released by New Zealand and accessed by Reuters, nearly 33% of those fleeing New Zealand are going to Australia, a place where they don't require a work visa. Net migration is still high, which means the number of those arriving is also high. But economists expect these numbers also to wane soon enough. This because the number of foreign nationals wanting to move to New Zealand is also falling due to the softer economy.
A lot of Indians who had gone there for Indians and people from other nationalities also, Indians constitute almost 5% of the New Zealand population, most of them living in Auckland and Wellington. So they started running away because they had no choice. We should not forget that they had migrated to New Zealand with a dream, and the dream was to get good quality of living and make some money for themselves. We all know per capita income of New Zealand is about close to $50,000, which is far more than Indian per capita of about $2,000 plus. So they went there to make a dream, but then the dream becomes sour when you find that you're not able to save anything. Forget about saving. You're not able to survive. You can't meet your monthly expenses, your basic expenses of groceries. So a lot of families that I know, they said that we are not able to buy our basic needs like groceries. Forget about meeting our mortgages. So I think that's what is making people flee, because their savings are nothing. I mean, there's no point of living thousands of kilometers away from your homeland. And then they start looking for other pastures. They look for neighboring countries. They look for other developed countries around the world to see if they can do better over there.
Those migrating away say that Australia has a lot more opportunities, better work opportunities, economic prospects, better standard of living, and as one resident told Reuters, they just seem to have it together. This in contrast with New Zealand, where the economy is still struggling after the central bank hiked cash rates in its most aggressive tightening since 1999. Unemployment rose to 4.7% and inflation also remains high. Also, countries like Australia have been recruiting and offering relocation packages, especially in areas like nursing, policing, and teaching. This because Australia has skill shortages and they're looking for people to bridge the gap. Again, this is happening in sharp contrast with New Zealand, where the government has undertaken a significant downsizing of the country's public service. Hence, many skilled people are looking for jobs, and Australia is only too happy to have them.
For certain class of skilled manpower, like for example medicos, for example accountants, nurses, Australia does open from time to time, but that scope of resettlement is for a very limited class of professionals. I can't say that, one can't assume that all the people who were settled in New Zealand, from everything that they were doing, they can all go and restart in Australia. And by the way, Australian economy is also not doing that great. I mean, the inflation demon has impacted Australia also, because we saw this phenomena happening across the world, especially in the developed countries. Some of the most developed countries in the world, like America, also is facing a challenge. America's growth is also not that great. So Australia, again, I mean, it may be a very large country from the point of view of geography, but it's a very tiny country when it comes to economy. And its sour relations with China also hasn't helped Australia. We know there was a trade war, a cold war going on between Australia and China on so many things, whether it was spirits or mining or other things. So I think people who are landing from Australia, from New Zealand to Australia, well, they might find a temporary reprieve, and probably geographically they may be in a very large belt. We've got Sydney, the commercial capital. You've got Canberra, you've got Perth, you've got Brisbane, you've got Adelaide, Melbourne. There there are about five, six, seven cities where you can settle down, but main business is in Sydney. That's the commercial capital where some of the New Zealanders have moved. Well, it may offer packages for people in the skill set that Australia needs, but we cannot assume and presume that everyone who was suffering on the economic front in New Zealand can probably move to Australia and find a living there. It's not going to be possible as by my own analysis. And I think people who are thinking of moving to Australia, they have to be very careful, very watchful, and they must analyze their career prospects over there.
Hope you found this video useful. For more such content, keep watching Mint.